The mansion looked like something out of a dream. Tall glass windows, marble floors, chandeliers that dripped with gold. It belonged to Kingsley Grant, a billionaire CEO known for his empire, his power, and his ruthless control. People admired him in public, feared him in private, and whispered about his coldness when he wasn't listening. To the outside world, Kingsley had everything, but inside his mansion, there was one rule everyone had to follow. Never go near the basement. It wasn't just a rule. It was a command. Strict, unshakable, unquestioned. The house staff knew it. The guards knew it. And now, Amaka knew it too. Amaka was the new nanny, a young black woman, strong yet gentle, hired to look after Kingsley's 7-year-old son. She had only been in the house for a week, but she already sensed something strange. The mansion was spotless, almost too perfect, yet parts of it felt empty, unlived in. At night, when the halls fell silent, she sometimes thought she heard noises that didn't belong. A soft cry, a shuffle of feet, a whisper echoing from beneath the ground. Every time she asked about it, the older staff would look away, muttering the same words, "Stay out of the basement." One evening, after putting the boy to bed, Amaka walked down the long hallway toward her room. That's when she froze. The sound came again, faint, muffled, like a child crying. Her heart quickened. It was coming from the locked door at the end of the hall. The door that led to the basement. Her hands trembled as she approached it. She pressed her ear to the cold wood, and what she heard made her blood run cold. A child's voice, whispering, "Please, somebody help me." Amaka jumped back, heart pounding in her chest. She turned around, expecting to see someone else in the hallway, but it was empty. The cry faded, replaced by silence so thick it felt like the walls were holding their breath. She swallowed hard and forced herself to step away. But as she did, something slid from underneath the basement door. A torn piece of paper with a shaky drawing of a girl holding a candle. At the bottom, written in crooked letters, were 3 chilling words: "I am here, asterisk the next morning." Amaka tried to shake off what had happened. She told herself maybe it was the wind, maybe her imagination. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. She had heard a child, and the torn piece of paper in her pocket, the one that said "I am here," was proof she couldn't ignore. Over the next few nights, she started noticing things she had overlooked before. A tray of food left near the basement door, bread half-eaten, a cup of water nearly empty, blankets that disappeared from the linen closet and were never returned. And once, when she was dusting the shelves in the library, she found a small doll tucked behind the books, old, worn, its hair matted, but clearly loved by someone. That night, long after the mansion had gone quiet, Amaka heard it again. A faint hum this time, not crying, but singing, a child's lullaby. The sound floated up from the basement like a ghost. Amaka's throat tightened. Whoever was down there wasn't just surviving. They were trying to stay sane. The next day, Amaka decided to test her suspicions. She carefully placed a small cookie on the floor near the basement door before leaving for her shift. Hours later, when she returned, it was gone. In its place was another drawing, slipped from under the door. This time, it was a picture of a little girl holding hands with someone tall. Above it, scrawled in shaky letters, it said, "Don't tell father." Amaka's hands shook as she stared at the note. She pressed her back against the wall, her chest heaving. The truth crashed over her. Kingsley wasn't just hiding something down there. He was hiding someone. A child. His own child. She felt sick. Her mind raced with questions. Why would a father lock away his daughter? Was it shame, fear, or something darker? The following evening, Amaka overheard two housemaids whispering in the kitchen. One of them, an older woman with tired eyes, muttered, "We shouldn't be here. No amount of money is worth this secret." The younger maid hushed her quickly, glancing toward the hall. But Amaka had heard enough. The staff knew something. They were all too afraid to speak. Later that night, as she was walking past the boys' room, Amaka noticed something strange. The billionaire's son, just 7 years old, was drawing quietly at his desk. She peeked inside, smiling softly, until she saw what he was sketching. It was the same girl, the same face she had seen in the drawings from the basement. Amaka froze. The boy looked up, innocent eyes meeting hers. "She told me not to tell anyone," he whispered, before going back to his paper. Amaka's heart broke in that moment. This wasn't just a secret hidden from the world. It was a wound festering inside this family. A little girl, locked away. A brother, forced into silence. And a father, living a lie behind his empire of glass and gold. That night, Amaka lay awake in her small room at the back of the mansion. Tears stung her eyes as she remembered the voice from the basement, the fragile hum of a lullaby. She thought of the girl, alone in the darkness, drawing pictures on scraps of paper, hoping someone would care enough to notice. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft tap at her door. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. She opened it, and there on the floor lay another note. This one was different. The handwriting was shakier, desperate. It read, "Please, don't let him forget me." Amaka pressed the note to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had only been in this mansion for a short time, but now she knew this wasn't just a job, it was a calling. She was meant to find this child. She was meant to bring her into the light. The mansion was quieter than usual that night. Even the ticking clock in the hall seemed hesitant, as if the house itself feared what was about to happen. Amaka moved silently, her footsteps careful on the marble floor. She had made up her mind. She couldn't keep ignoring the cries, the drawings, the notes that begged not to be forgotten. The truth was locked behind that basement door, and tonight she would open it. Her hands shook as she reached for the spare keys she had carefully taken from the head housekeeper's ring. She knew if she was caught, she'd lose her job, maybe even worse. But she couldn't care about herself anymore. A child was suffering behind that door, and that was something her heart could no longer endure. Amaka slid the key into the lock. For a moment, it resisted, stiff from years of disuse. Then, with a heavy click, the bolts loosened. The sound echoed down the empty hallway, and her breath caught in her throat. She gripped the handle and pushed. The door groaned, opening slowly into darkness. The smell hit her first, damp, cold, stale air that carried years of loneliness. The staircase creaked under her weight as she descended, her candle flickering nervously against the stone walls. Her heart pounded louder with every step. She whispered softly, "Hello, is someone there?" For a moment, there was silence, and then a small voice answered from the shadows, trembling but clear, "You came." The candlelight fell across a figure huddled in the corner, a little girl, no older than 6 or 7, her hair tangled, her eyes wide and glassy. She clutched a worn doll against her chest like it was her only friend. Amaka gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears stung her eyes instantly. This was her, the daughter the CEO had locked away. The girl blinked against the light, her lips trembling. "Please," she whispered, "don't tell father." Amaka's knees gave way, and she crouched down in front of the child, setting the candle gently on the floor. Her voice shook as she spoke. "My darling, why are you here? Why are you alone in the dark?" The girl hugged her doll tighter, tears filling her eyes. Father says I don't belong upstairs. He says I'll ruin everything. He says I'm cursed. Amaka's heart shattered. She reached out slowly, brushing the child's tangled hair from her face. No, no, sweetheart. You are not cursed. You are precious. You are loved. And you deserve the light. The little girl sobbed quietly, leaning into Amaka's touch, as if she hadn't been touched with kindness in years. Amaka's tears fell freely now, dripping onto the cold stone floor. She wrapped her arms round the child, holding her tight. You're safe now, she whispered. I promise you, you're safe with me. The girl pulled back slightly, her eyes wide with fear. You can't stay. Father gets angry if anyone comes down here. He says the world can never know I exist. Amaka felt her chest tighten with rage and sorrow. What kind of father hides his own daughter like a shameful secret? She shook her head, her voice firm. The world deserves to know you and your father. He needs to face what he's done. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed above, the sound of a door slamming. Amaka froze. The girl's tiny hands clutched her arm in panic. It's him, she whispered in terror. He can't know you're here. The air grew colder, thicker, as the CEO's voice boomed faintly from the top of the stairs. Amaka, where are you? Her heart raced. There was no going back now. She had crossed the line, and the truth was about to explode. The footsteps grew louder, closer, echoing like thunder above the stone basement. Amaka's heart slammed in her chest. She glanced at the little girl, her terrified eyes begging for silence. Amaka squeezed her hand gently, whispering, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Then the shadow appeared at the top of the staircase. Kingsley Grant, the billionaire CEO. His towering frame filled the doorway, his face tight with fury. His voice sliced through the dark. "What are you doing here?" His eyes darted past Amaka, landing on the small figure cowering in the corner. For a moment, his mask cracked, shock, then panic, then pure rage. "You weren't supposed to see her," he hissed, his voice trembling. "No one was supposed to see her." Amaka rose to her feet, shielding the child behind her. Her voice shook, but she stood firm. "She's a little girl, Kingsley. Your little girl. How could you do this to her?" Kingsley's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with a mix of shame and anger. "You don't understand. You think you know, but you don't. Keeping her down here, it was the only way." The girl whimpered, clutching Amaka's dress. "Father, please," she whispered, her voice fragile as glass. "Don't send me back into the dark." Kingsley froze, his hand tightening on the railing. For a fleeting moment, pain flickered in his eyes. He turned away, as if he couldn't bear to look at her. "You don't know what I've done," he muttered. "You don't know why she can't be seen." Amaka's voice broke with tears. "Then tell me, Kingsley, tell me why a child has been living like a prisoner in your own home." His face twisted, torn between silence and confession. Finally, his words came out in a rush, raw and jagged. "Because she reminds me of her mother, and I couldn't face it." The girl's eyes widened, her lip trembling. "Mama," she whispered. Kingsley's voice cracked. "When your mother died, I couldn't bear to look at you. You have her eyes, her smile. Every time I saw you, it felt like losing her all over again." His body shook, his fists clenched. "So I locked it away. I locked you away. I thought if I kept you hidden, maybe the pain would fade. But it never did." Amaka's tears streamed down her cheeks. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, not because she didn't understand his grief, but because he had punished a child for the scars in his own heart. She whispered fiercely, "She is not a ghost, Kingsley. She is your daughter, and all she wanted was your love." The little girl's sobs filled the room, soft but piercing. "I thought you hated me," she cried, burying her face in Amaka's skirt. Kingsley stumbled back, as if her words had struck him like a blow. His lips trembled. "I never hated you. I hated myself." The weight of his confession hung heavy in the basement, suffocating. For the first time in years, Kingsley stood face to face with the truth he had buried beneath wealth, power, and walls of stone. And for the first time, he couldn't hide anymore. The basement felt colder now, as if the walls themselves carried the weight of everything that had been spoken. Kingsley stood frozen halfway down the stairs, his powerful frame shaking, his face pale. Amaka held the child tightly in her arms, rocking her gently, whispering, "You are not forgotten. You are loved." Kingsley's voice was a low growl, but it cracked with something deeper than anger. "You shouldn't have come here, Amaka. You've ruined everything." Amaka looked up, her eyes burning with defiance through her tears. "No, Kingsley, everything was already ruined. I just pulled the curtain back so you'd finally see it." The little girl lifted her tear-streaked face, staring at her father. Her tiny voice trembled. "Why didn't you want me, Daddy?" The question sliced through the air. Kingsley's lips parted, but no words came out. His shoulders sagged under the weight of her innocence. For a man who had silenced boardrooms and crushed rivals with his voice, he suddenly had none left. Amaka stood, still shielding the girl behind her. Her voice steadied, though her heart raced. "You can't bury your pain in her, Kingsley. She's not the reason your wife is gone. She's the reason you still have a family left. And every second you keep her in the dark, you're losing her." Kingsley pressed a hand against his chest, as if her words were striking at wounds too deep to hide. He turned away, his breathing ragged. "You don't understand. If the world finds out, everything I've built will crumble." Amaka stepped closer, her voice fierce. "So you'll sacrifice your own child to protect your empire? What good is an empire if it's built on tears and silence?" Kingsley flinched, gripping the railing until his knuckles whitened. His jaw trembled, but deep in his eyes, a crack of doubt finally appeared. He was running out of excuses, running out of lies. The girl slipped out from behind Amaka, stepping toward her father on trembling legs. Her doll dangled from her hand. She looked so small, so fragile, yet her words carried the weight of truth. "You don't have to be a CEO with me, Daddy. You just have to be my dad." Kingsley's knees nearly buckled. His chest heaved, and for the first time in years, tears welled in his eyes. He covered his face with both hands, a broken sound escaping his lips. "I don't know how to be that anymore," he confessed, his voice shaking. "I've forgotten how." Amaka stepped forward, her hand firm on his shoulder. "Then learn. Start now. No one is asking for perfection, Kingsley. She's just asking for your presence. She's asking for you." The little girl hesitated, then reached forward, her tiny hand brushing against his arm. Kingsley lowered his hands, his tear-streaked face revealed. He stared at her, as though seeing her for the very first time. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, his voice breaking. But the girl shook her head, her eyes wide with innocence. "I don't care about deserving. I just want my dad." Kingsley's chest cracked open with a sob he could no longer suppress. He dropped to his knees, gathering his daughter into his arms for the first time in years. His body shook as he clung to her, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Amaka turned away, her own tears spilling freely. For all the wealth in this mansion, all the power Kingsley had gathered, this moment, a father finally holding his daughter, was worth more than any empire. For a long moment, no one moved. Kingsley clutched his daughter tightly, his powerful frame shaking as sobs tore through him. The billionaire CEO, a man feared in boardrooms, admired in headlines, was just a broken father on the cold basement floor, holding the child he had nearly lost forever. Amaka stood silently nearby, her eyes glistening. She knew she had just witnessed the first crack in the walls Kingsley had built around his heart. A father who had hidden behind wealth and power was finally facing the one truth. He could never buy love. The little girl pulled back slightly, looking at him with tear-stained cheeks. "Will you lock me away again?" she whispered, fear still trembling in her voice. Kingsley's heart shattered all over again. He cupped her face with both hands, his own tears streaming. "Never," he said firmly, "never again. You belong in the light, not in the dark." They slowly rose to their feet, the candle flickering against the stone walls. Kingsley looked around the basement, as if suddenly realizing the cruelty of what he had created. The cold bed, the bare walls, the loneliness pressed into every corner. His face twisted with shame. "I did this to you," he murmured, almost choking on the words. "I stole your childhood." The girl hugged her doll tighter, her voice small but filled with longing. "I just wanted you." Her words cut deeper than any accusation ever could. Kingsley staggered back a step, pressing a hand to his chest. All those years, chasing money, chasing power, and all the while, you were right here, waiting for me. His voice broke again. "I thought I lost your mother, but really, I lost you." Amaka stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Kingsley, grief blinded you, but you have a chance now. Don't waste it. Don't let her grow up thinking she wasn't wanted. Be the father she needs." Kingsley nodded slowly, his throat tightening as he whispered, "I will. I swear I will." For the first time, the little girl smiled faintly, fragile but real. She placed her tiny hand in her father's. "Then show me," she said softly. Kingsley's chest tightened at the simple demand. No deals, no contracts, no riches, just a child asking for love. It was the hardest, yet the simplest request he had ever faced. He bent down, kissing the top of her head, and whispered, "From now on, you'll never have to ask again." Suddenly, the phone upstairs rang loudly, its shrill tone echoing down the stairwell. Kingsley's body stiffened, his old instincts tugging at him. The call of business, of empire, of distractions. But then he looked down at his daughter's trusting eyes. For the first time, he didn't move. He didn't even reach for it. Instead, he pulled her closer, whispering, "They can wait. You come first." Amaka smiled through her tears. She had seen enough powerful men choose greed over family. But tonight, she had witnessed something rare. A man finally choosing what truly mattered. The beginning of redemption. The following weeks felt like stepping into a new world. The mansion, once silent and cold, began to fill with laughter again. Curtains that had stayed closed for years were drawn open, letting in the sunlight. The house no longer felt like a prison of secrets. It felt alive. Kingsley made changes. He canceled meetings, pushed aside deals, and for the first time in his life, he prioritized something greater than his empire. Every morning, he sat with his son and daughter at breakfast. Every evening, he tucked them into bed himself. The once distant father was slowly learning how to be present. One night, as Kingsley knelt by his daughter's bed, she looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, are you going to forget me again?" The question struck like lightning. Kingsley's throat tightened, and he shook his head tears brimming. Never, I promise, never again. You are my world. She smiled faintly, clutching her doll closer. A smile born not of fear, but of trust. Amaka remained by their side, no longer just the nanny, but part of their healing. She wasn't there to clean or obey orders. She was there because she cared. Kingsley knew she had given him something priceless. The courage to face his past and the strength to change his future. One evening, Kingsley found Amaka in the kitchen, washing dishes quietly. He paused in the doorway, his heart heavy with gratitude. You didn't just help my children, he said softly. You helped me. You showed me what I'd lost and what I could still become. Amaka looked up, her eyes gentle but steady. You were never lost, Kingsley. You were just afraid. Fear builds walls. Love tears them down. Her words sank deep into his chest, breaking him and healing him all at once. Days passed, then weeks. Kingsley began bringing his daughter outside, introducing her slowly to a world she had never known. Parks, sunshine, laughter, things she had been denied for too long. Each time she clung to his hand, her eyes shining with wonder, as though the world itself was a gift. At a business dinner, Kingsley shocked his colleagues by arriving with both his children by his side. Whispers filled the room, eyes widened, but he didn't care. For once, he wasn't hiding. He stood tall, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. This is my family, he announced proudly. My greatest achievement. The room fell silent, but Kingsley didn't need their approval anymore. He finally understood the greatest power wasn't in money or titles. It was in love, forgiveness, and presence. One night, after putting the children to bed, Kingsley sat on the balcony, staring at the stars. Amaka joined him, silent for a while, before whispering, "Do you ever think your wife can see you now?" Kingsley swallowed hard, his eyes misting. "If she can, I hope she knows I finally did something right. For her, for them." Amaka placed a gentle hand on his arm. "She knows." Conclusion, final 3 minutes. The mansion no longer held secrets. The forbidden basement was empty, the locks removed, the door left wide open. A symbol that no one in this family would ever be hidden again. Kingsley's empire still stood, but this time he knew what truly mattered. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a father, a man who had fallen, broken, and risen again. And as his daughter ran across the garden one bright morning, her laughter echoing through the halls, Kingsley realized he hadn't just freed her from the dark. He had freed himself too.